you like to do it? Oh my god, you do the intro. Yeah, you do the intro. Action.
I forgot what I'm saying.
Action.
Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Today's a very exciting day because we're
gonna be sowing seeds! 3, 2, 1, go. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very exciting day. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. We're indoors today because we're going to start off our first seeds of the season. I'm so excited. This year we've got a game changer. It's going to be a bit different. Mostly I'm going to be focusing on chili seeds today, which need a lot of very specific things. And last year I sowed these around March and I still had a good year, but it could have been a lot better. And there's a few things that we need. The first is this, which is an absolutely beastie propagator. Now there's two things that we need for chili seeds. They're very picky, and the first thing to get the seeds to germinate is that they're going to need a really warm soil, and this should do the job fantastically. It's thermostatically controlled and it's got a 50-watt heater in, so we're going to be aiming for a soil temperature of about 28 degrees, and this should be able to cut it. The other thing we're going to need is a light, because if all goes to plan, then these seeds within about 2 or 3 weeks should have germinated, and after that, that's when they're going to need light on them. You can put them maybe in a south-facing conservatory or a windowsill, but they're not going to have the best start. Even in a south-facing windowsill in February, they're probably going to end up quite tall, quite leggy as they stretch for the light. And what you really want is a solid, compact growth. It'll produce a much stronger plant. So this is a bit of an experiment, this one. It's a fairly new model, T5 LED. This propagator is a beast. This is like an industry standard. It's recommended by everyone. So the link for this is in the description if you're interested, but I'm not going to put the link for this one in the description because I'm not too sure about it. But we'll see as the season goes how these do. So today we're going to be starting off with getting the potting mix. Then I'm going to be talking about all the seed varieties. We're going to be preparing the seeds as well, which should be interesting. And then hopefully I can find somewhere in the house to create a bit of a propagation station for this propagator and the grow light. I haven't planned that bit yet, so I'm sure it will be fine. But thank you ever so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoy. We're going to start with the potting mix. Okay, so I just wanted to talk briefly about the potting mix I'm using this year, and I'm keeping it really simple. I haven't got an established mix that I use every year and have great success with. But this year I'm just trying a kind of mixture of multi-purpose compost, which is what we've got here. This is the peat-free New Horizons stuff, which I've had success with before as a general purpose compost, so I'm hoping that'll be good. But I am a little bit worried because it's super kind of loose, really loose texture. I'm going to be adding some vermiculite, which is just a natural kind of mineral that is meant to be really good for water retention. And I'm hoping this will be okay. It's a bit of an experiment this year, but hopefully I'll be able to mix this in and it will just improve this a little bit, give my seedlings a little bit more chance. The most important thing to know about any seed mix is that you want to keep it really basic in terms of nutrients. You don't want to be adding fertilizers and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people do that with the idea that it will give their seeds the best start, but really they just need somewhere that's going to hold the moisture and keep warm. They don't need any nutrients until they start putting on proper growth, and by that time we're going to be thinking about potting them on anyway. But this is looking nice. There's a little bit of vermiculite that you can see throughout here, and I think I'm happy with this. So I've cracked out the chili seed box and here it is. It's not bad. I've got a few interesting varieties in here. These are all from 2018 and 2019. Last year I only grew Cayenne because it was the first year of the allotment, and that was kind of what I wanted to focus on, all the different things that I could grow. I really missed growing chilies, so this year I'm going back in a big way. I'm going to grow as many as I can, absolutely fill the greenhouse probably. It's just something about them. I just love growing them. The issue with these seeds is that most of them aren't isolated. To try and explain it quickly, peppers cross-pollinate very easily. So a lot of these seeds might have been compromised. You don't necessarily know if the seed has been compromised because the fruiting pod of the chili will look completely normal. So these cayenne seeds would have looked like a cayenne seed, but because they were growing alongside other peppers, it's possible that these seeds have been kind of contaminated by another pepper. So I have bought some others, and one that I'm most interested in and most excited by is this, which is the Chili Chump seed kit. I've spoken about Chili Chump loads on the channel. It's kind of an inspiration for me starting to grow chilies, and he's just a fantastic channel. I recommend you go and watch him if you've not seen him before. But every year he releases these seed kits, and the idea is you can kind of grow along with him. And there's some really interesting stuff in here that we'll have a look at. And those seed kits are kind of curated by Fatali at Fatali Seeds, who's a guy over in Scandinavia who just has this amazing chili farm, basically. And he sells really reliable, lots of interesting seeds as well. So let's have a look at these. First up from the Chili Chump seed kit, we have the Ancho Poblano. Now, this is a pretty mild pepper. It should be really nice and big, and these are really commonly kind of stuffed or dried. I think the world record for the biggest chili pepper belongs to one of these, and there's a kind of Ancho Poblano growing competition that a lot of people run. So hopefully we'll get some lovely big fruit from these. Next one in the Chili Chump seed kit. Well, you've all heard of jalapenos, but this one is a little bit different. Hopefully I can find some pictures of this one, because although it looks normal on here, these have the weirdest looking structure that I've ever seen. They're called the farmer's market potato, and they get this weird grey skin. To be honest, they look disgusting. So I'm really interested to see just what comes of this one. Next up in the seed kit, we have this, the orange habanero. This is a pretty classic. The traditional habanero is red, and the orange one is very similar. It's just got a slightly more zesty flavor. I have grown these before. Fantastic, very hot. They're very nice when you make them into a sauce. They're a lot more mild, but if you use these in cooking, ooh, you got to be a bit careful. Next up from the Chili Chump seed kit, we have this one, the Aji Norteno. This is a bit of a strange one. On FataliNet, this is listed as like a 7 out of 10 on the heat. Very spicy. But elsewhere, it's not. It's listed as a kind of mild one, so it'll be very interesting to see this one. Never had it before. Apparently pairs very well with fish and is used like really commonly in fresh cooking. So this will be an interesting one. Next up from the seed kit, we have this. This is got the very catchy name, the CGN 19198. This is going to be a fascinating challenge. Apparently this can take up to a month to germinate and can be a really tricky pepper. It's been cultivated by Fatali, and it's like defied botanical definition, basically. It's a really, really interesting pepper with a pretty interesting history, and it's going to be a real challenge. So I'm intrigued to see how this one goes. And last, but definitely not least from the seed kit, we have this. This is the Carolina Reaper crossed with a 7-pot Douglah. These are two of the hottest peppers in the world. I've never grown a Carolina Reaper. I'm honestly terrified. But this is another really interesting pepper in its own right. Very rare. This isn't particularly fully stable yet. Earlier I mentioned about cross-pollination, and when you cross these peppers together, it takes a long time, multiple generations. We're talking 8, 9, 10 years of breeding these peppers together to try and get them to produce a stable fruit that is reliable time after time. So this is going to be an interesting one because these can really vary because they're still quite early in that stage. But yeah, terrifying. I'm not going to be eating one of these for 1,000 subscribers, I can tell you that much for sure. I'll be in hospital. So we move on from the Chili Chump seed kit to these ones that I've got from Fatali. A few of these were kindly sent free, but I did order a few as well. This one, the first one, is the Starfish Yellow. I should say they weren't sent to me free because I'm a YouTuber. He just quite often chucks in a free few seeds with the order. But yeah, this Starfish Yellow, this looks really interesting. Apparently super easy to grow, so a good beginner chili. Fairly mild, really fantastic looking yellow fruit. Just incredible stuff. Apparently this one has a really nice appley flavour as well, so very intrigued to see what comes of this one. And similar to that, we have as well the red Starfish. This is once again very similar, apparently very easy to grow, and has these amazing flowers that I'm quite intrigued to see. Here we have one that I deliberately ordered from Fatali. This is a Sugar Rush Long Peach. I've always wanted to try one of the Sugar Rush varieties of peppers. As the name suggests, they're incredibly sweet and meant to be really flavorful. Really, really excited for this one. This next one, the Purple Tiger. This one I picked mainly just for its looks. It looks like an incredibly beautiful plant. I'm not too sure on the kind of flavor of the pods that this is going to produce, but it has these amazing kind of variegated leaves, and the pepper pods themselves are this like beautiful deep purple, almost black, that then turns to this vibrant red. And next up, we have the Aji Gormet Fantasy. Now, this is another kind of Fatali specialism, one of the first he ever grew for commercial use. Meant to be really interesting, flavor kind of focused, very, very light on the heat. Kind of meant to be I love it or hate it pepper, and I've never tried it, so it'll be interesting to find out whether I love this one or hate it. And lastly, we have this one, which is another really interesting one that you can't actually see. This is, once again, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but the Chupetinho White. This is really interesting. The Chupetinho was, in general, interesting because they're a Chinense variety, which are normally the hotter peppers, but these are very mild, but they still have that Chinense flavor. So I'm really interested to see how this one comes out. But I tried to keep it quick. I hope it was quick. Okay, so I've got to do a bit of thinking now about what ones I actually want to grow. I definitely want to grow all these from ChiliChat and Fatali, obviously. We've got 12 here. We've got 48 cells in this propagator. Realistically, I don't have enough space for 48 chili plants. As much as I would love that to be the case, it's not. But I'm probably going to try and grow them on anyway. The conservatory will probably end up flooded with them, the greenhouse, but we'll see, we'll see. The thing is, we've got 48, 12, that's nice easy maths. I think what I'll do is grow 3 of each of these varieties, so 36, and then that leaves me with 12 cells left over to maybe do a selection of these. I haven't picked exactly which ones I'll do yet. There's one here. This plant is, it's an enigma, right? So this sprouted in 2019. And it's kind of like a cross between a habanero and a cayenne. The pods were kind of elongated habanero type pods, and it's the best tasting pepper I've ever experienced. I have no idea where the hell it came from, but I did manage to salvage like 10 seeds. If I can grow this again this year, I'll be very, very happy. So you might have noticed when I was talking through the varieties, these chili packets don't have loads and loads of seeds. It's not like when you go to the supermarket and you get a packet of onion seeds and there's like 200 in there. I think the average is probably about 10 seeds in these packets, some less. So we really want to get the best possible germination rate. This is going to help an awful lot with that. But there's also another method I want to talk about. But first, I'm going to have to put the kettle on. So why on earth am I making up a big glass jar of tea with some ratty old tea bags? Well, there's a pretty good chance that you know, actually, because this has become a lot more common over the last few years. The first time I saw it a few years ago, I was like, well, what the hell, I've never heard of this. But it is becoming a lot more common nowadays. So we're going to be soaking these seeds in the tea solution. And the idea is that this is a kind of chemical process called scarification. I can't find any compelling science behind this at the moment in terms of the use of tea specifically. There is science behind the idea of chemical or physical scarification of seeds, whereby the seed coating is kind of affected by processes, and this can aid germination or trigger germination. So it'll be interesting to see. There's loads of anecdotal evidence about this being beneficial, and I couldn't find any anecdotal evidence of it being harmful. So it definitely doesn't seem like it can hurt. So I figure, why not? It's not too much effort, and it uses literally nothing, just old tea bags. So we're going to be soaking these overnight. You can do it anywhere between 2 to 48 hours, people recommend. But I think it'll be nice to leave these overnight, and then I'll be back tomorrow to pot these all up. So there we go, nice and simple. For some reason, we don't have any shot glasses, but I do have an obscene number of espresso glasses, so that's what I've been using. The important thing is to make sure the tea is cool. Don't go putting your seeds into boiling hot tea, just let it cool to room temperature. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll see how this looks in the morning. Hi folks, welcome back. Good morning. The seeds have been soaking overnight, and hopefully the tea is beginning to do its job. Interestingly, some of the seeds have sunk to the bottom, like in this one. and in other ones they're still floating at the top. There's a bit of a myth around this, and some people seem to think that if your seeds sink, they're dead. But I don't think that's the case. I've seen lots of anecdotal people saying it's fine, don't worry about that. So fingers crossed that that's not an issue. Now the fun begins. In a perfect world, I would have had this going overnight with the soil all in here, getting it all perfectly up to temperature and ideal conditions for these seeds to go in. You rarely get perfect on this channel. I don't have too much time to spend doing this today. So the plan is to get the potting mix that I made yesterday pre-moistened. And the key point about that is I'm going to be using warm water just to kind of prevent any shock to the seeds. Hopefully that will kind of mitigate not having had this getting up to temperature. We'll move into the conservatory, get these filled up, and then we can actually start planting the first seeds. I'm so excited. So the thing about pre-moistening for seedlings is that you've only got a tiny bit of soil going into each of their cells, so you need to make sure this is really, really well mixed, because otherwise you'll have some cells that are going to be a lot wetter than others, and we just want to make sure it's nice and uniform. And then once you're fairly confident it's all mixed in, the best way to find out if it's good is to just get your hands in, give it a good squeeze. You might get a few little drops, but really you don't want too much more than that. If you've gone too far and added too much water, just add some more compost. But this looks pretty good, so I'm going to get the trays and we'll get them filled. So there's nothing complicated about getting these seed trays filled. Just going to chuck it in. And one of our biggest enemies here is the potential for these to be filled with air. So we want to get these pushed in really firm. And it's always shocking how your seed tray can look full, and then when you start to push the air out, it's actually, you've probably only got it half filled with compost. So seed trays are all ready. Next task, slightly boring one. I've just got to get all the plant labels written. Okay, plant labels done. So what would be wise to do if I was growing at any kind of scale, or if I only had a couple of varieties, would be to kind of group them together in the seed trays. And that's because sometimes the different varieties of chilies need slightly different things. They have slightly different requirements. So for example, if you were growing loads of Chinense varieties or Annam varieties or Bactum, then you could try and group them in the trays because they have slightly different requirements in terms of the temperature that they need or humidity, and especially the early light. Some varieties, I think Annam, are quite susceptible to like curling up if they're getting too much light, whereas your Chinense varieties are probably going to like drink it out, like they need as much as they can get. So if you are only growing a few, just keep that in mind. But I've got quite a large variety and I'm not really going to be able to do that, so not too worried, but just a little tip. Next up, I'm going to get these pricked out of the tea. It can be quite tricky. I've seen people use these plant labels quite a lot to kind of fish them out. Hopefully it won't be too frustrating. But then we'll get them in and then I'll finally think about where they're actually going to go. You just gently try and fish them out and they should be relatively easy to get. And then they just kind of adhere to the paper quite nicely. And I'm going to take each seed out, plant it pretty much immediately, and that way there's no kind of danger of getting the seeds mixed up or anything like that. So there we go, that's the Chili Chomp seed kits and the Fatali-Net seeds all in. From the personal selection, I've gone for what should be an interesting selection. I've got Cayenne at the back, which is just, as I said earlier, it's just a real staple for me. But I've also got the spaghetti pepper, which is going in here, which is just quite curious, it's quite interesting, it has really interesting long peppers. Interesting quite a few times then. We've got the Peach Ghost as well, which I grew 2019. Very hot. I've still got some sauce I made from this kicking about in the fridge because yeah, it's scary to use, but really nice floral kind of flavours to it. And as well, back here I'm going to be putting in the mystery pepper that I spoke about earlier, this weird kind of habanero cayenne flavour profile. Super sweet, just delicious. So I haven't done these in tea or anything like that, and they're a little bit old and they're probably not stored the best, so I'm going to do 3 seeds to each cell for these. One thing you should remember if you're handling chili seeds is often a good idea to wear gloves, because I've just realised that I'm not, and these Peach Ghost ones are like very, very hot. I'm hoping I don't regret that later. So there we go, we've got all of our cells filled, and hopefully we're going to have a really good germination rate with this propagator. I'm going to take this upstairs now and spend quite a long time kind of fiddling around and trying to get a good configuration. It's really difficult to film in the office, so I'll probably just show you the after. I'll probably be quite stressed out, but hopefully I'll see you in a second. Well, here we are. It's not pretty, but I did manage to find a space in the corner of the office. One of the biggest challenges we had here was finding somewhere where I could actually get power to this stuff. Fortunately, I had this kind of cheap shelving unit just lying around. I had to take out a middle shelf, but other than that, it works pretty well. We've got the propagator sat on the bottom. We've got the thermostatic control over here, which is lovely. And it's all wired into the soil, so it clicks on and off based on the temperature of the soil. Amazing. The lights work pretty well. Obviously, I can't attest to their performance in terms of growth, but they put out a surprising amount of light for such a lightweight, small unit. So I think that just about brings us to a close. I don't think I've got anything else to show you. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed making it. It's been such a nice process. So excited to have this. It's going to be really interesting to watch these develop over the year. Obviously still keeping the allotment going, and I'll be doing lots of other stuff, but chilies are definitely, I think, the highlight of my growing year. So thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below, what are you growing? Have you got anything in the ground, in the soil, in your propagators yet? Thank you ever so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again next time.